Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Gathering. We are back after a short break last week, and we will not be on next week because it is Christmas. So we're going to take some time and hang out with our families and do some stuff like that. But we will be back probably the week after that. We've got some great shows coming up for the month of January. We're scheduling stuff out into February as well. But tonight, we have a very special guest with us. We have Stephen Williams from Memphis Ghost Investigations and Spirit Rescue. He does some very unique work. And we're going to get into talking all about that. And we're just going to talk about some paranormal and some experiences and some of the stuff that we love to discuss on every show. So without further ado, Stephen, welcome to the program. Go ahead and tell our viewers all about yourself and your background.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity. I've been investigating for about 18 years. It started off with a little simple ghost tour down in St. Augustine, Florida, that led me to a couple of ladies here in the Memphis area that had a little team back in 2002. And we exchanged some photos and audio recordings. And then after a while, they asked me to start going with them. And initially, they were just doing like cemetery investigations and a few little things like that. And then we started getting residential work. So over the past 18 years, I've been in hundreds, if not thousands, of private homes and businesses and public sites across mostly the Mid-South and the southeastern U.S. I have been up in New England area and into Canada even a little bit, but my focus is down here in this area and specifically within about 150-mile radius of Memphis. So had a lot of experiences, seen a lot of things, heard a lot of things. It's pretty normal to me now. It's not too paranormal anymore.
It's kind of funny how I think we all kind of have that transition, right? I mean, we all kind of start out, we have these experiences and everybody's got their own story that got them started. You know, for like myself, I was a skeptic my whole life. I never really thought much about it until in my 30s, I had my first experience and changed my life, and off we go. The next 16 years has been much like yourself in the sense of hundreds of investigations all over the country doing all these different things. And you kind of transition from that. It's you're trying to figure out what it is to understanding more of what you're experiencing and then trying to figure out what your purpose is in this path. So, which is really fascinating what you guys do. So that's kind of what I want to start with first before we get into our usual questions, because what you do is very, very unique. I know that a lot of teams like ourselves, we have psychics and psychic mediums that can do spirit releasement, and sometimes it is necessary, but that is really your guys' focus, right? It's freeing earthbound spirits. So why don't you explain to people, a little bit about what that is and exactly how you guys do your work?
Yeah, we're kind of like social services for earthbound spirits and also first responders. So our focus is not on going into someone's private home or business to try to collect evidence, because we're all, me and my other team members, there's two of us, three of us with another guy that works with us occasionally. We're all mediums. They're more clairvoyant, clairaudient than I am. I do have those abilities, but they're not my strong suits. I'm clairsentient. So I can go into anybody's home and tell if there's a spirit in there. I can tell if they're male or female. I can tell their frequency of their vibration. So I know immediately if they're earthbound or if they transition, if they're, crossed over type relatives and that type of thing. And so our focus, again, is not on the collection of evidence. So instead of going in with a lot of equipment and spending hours and hours setting that up and then going back and reviewing it later, we're able to actually walk in, tell who's there, connect with those spirit energies, hear their story, find out why they're there, where they've come from, what their needs are, their desires are. And then we are able to connect them with their loved ones on the other side and help them to release and transition. Many times they'll do that immediately when they get that information. And sometimes they think about it a little while and then they might transition later. But yeah, it's not a time-consuming process for us. I've been blessed to work with a lot of gifted mediums over the last 18 years. And the two that I'm working with now, there's a young lady named Kayla Bales. She's been able to see spirits and hear spirits since she was a child. And then Stevie Monty Smith, who's just recently joined up and helped us in quite a few situations. He's a developing medium who's actually studying with some English mediums right now. He studied with Robert Brown.
Oh, wow.
And also he's taking classes, online classes at the Arthur Finlay College, which is where all the
Fantastic, yes.
famous mediums were trained. So he's a big asset right now. But yeah, that's our focus. So
yeah, and I think that's something that you mentioned that I want to just touch on real quick is that I think people don't sometimes understand this particular thing, or at least this has been our experience. Sometimes we connect with spirits, whether it's on the mediumship level or even just in through evidentiary review, right. And you get the impression, you realize that these spirits don't realize that they've passed. Sometimes right. They don't really understand why they're stuck. And that's where, you know, people that have expertise like you do and mediums that work with spirit releasement can actually come in and help those spirits to actually no longer be stuck. I mean, imagine how horrible it would be to be confined somewhere and not understand why you're there and not understand how you can get out. So right. I think it's really cool what you guys do. And I think it's a fascinating topic. Have you guys have any, I mean, you have a website, obviously. So is there any steps that people can take if they think they need your type of services, or what is, you know, how do cases get directed directly to you guys typically?
Normally we receive a text, an email, or a phone call, you know, a voicemail, and then I'll get back in touch with those people. And since I'm clairsentient, I can actually a lot of times just read from an email. I can sense the energy.
Yep, pick up the energy, right?
Spirit. You know how that works. So a lot of times I'll know right off the bat whether or not, you know, there's something going on at the house. And then when I get somebody on the phone, it even becomes clearer for me. I can also, when I get the address, I can take go online and find that on Google Maps and get a street view and send that to my mediums, and they can read off of that too.
Right.
So we get a lot of information. Yeah, we get a lot of information before we ever get to the site. And so that's the way people reach us. And then we also, once I determine if there's actually some spirit activity taking place there and someone needs our help, to receive the counseling that we can provide and the guidance to help them release. Then we send out an electronic questionnaire and legal permission form. And we never charge for our services. I haven't taken a penny in 18 years for doing this kind of work. And many times people will try to pay us. But we have a charity here in Memphis at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And
fantastic.
They're working to find a cure for pediatric catastrophic diseases. So we always ask people if they want to show their gratitude for the help that we provide, is to make a donation to St. Jude. So it's service work for us. It really is.
Absolutely. That's wonderful, man. I like the way you phrased it too. I think the way you put it was kind of cool. Like social workers and first responders for the spirit world. That's really cool. I mean, I just kind of like the way you kind of framed that. That's unique.
Yeah. I was going to ask a question. I'm probably the most skeptical person on our team. Mm-hmm. I'm less skeptic now than I was when I started this journey, because
probably, Al, really,
there's been things that I've seen and heard that I have no explanation for. But you said when you go into a place, you can determine whether they're earthbound or whatever. I like to believe that spirits can travel if they want and come and go as they please. Do you? What's your thoughts on that? Do you believe in that, or?
I believe that the ones who have transitioned, who have crossed over, can do that very easily.
Okay.
Our loved ones will come and visit sometimes and leave us signs or gifts like coins or feathers. That happens a lot.
Right.
Now, I think Matt touched on this earlier. The earthbounds, sometimes they get caught like in mental loops. And we were in a house one time in Midtown Memphis, and there was a young girl that we discovered in a closet there. She's about 14 years old. And the last thought that she had before she had passed was that the house was on fire, and that's all she
Oh, wow.
over.
I'm getting chills as you're talking about
Yeah,
that.
so she was stuck in that mental loop, unfortunately, and we couldn't even really break through to her because she was so consumed in that thought.
Wow.
We're energy workers, and we're able to project positive energy, love, vibrational energy to a spirit, and it helps them helps their vibration and frequency to increase. And at that point, she was able to break out of that mental loop, and we could get a dialogue going on with her, and able to give her some counseling, and then direct her to her loved ones who are actually there. In my experience, when there's an earthbound spirit, especially children, there's always a crossed over loved one right there nearby who's kind of patiently waiting for that spirit to become aware of them. And so that's kind of our job, in a sense, is we're like vibrational bridges. So we can direct the attention of the earthbound spirits who are a lower frequency of vibration to those loved ones who are really close to them. They're just aware of them.
And that makes a lot of sense to me, because like a lot of times as we start going down, some of us start getting more into that side of it, or recognizing gifts or what have you. You start to recognize spirit guides more, and you start to work with your spirit guides in different levels. And a lot of times you start to understand that those spirit guides are often loved ones who have passed that are now filling that role with you. So it would make sense to me that if you were stuck in that loop, some of the first people that would be there from the other side would be the loved ones that are trying to get you where you need to be in transition once you get out of that cycle. So that makes perfect sense to me.
The other thing, I think, in my experience, time in the spirit world is not the same as it is for us. So the girl that was in the closet, she might have been there for years and years. Well, she was, because she was from an earlier time period. But to her, it might have just seemed like, an afternoon or an hour. Right. Who knows? So it seems to me like there's not a correlation between our time frame and the time frame that spirits are experiencing.
I've spoken to many mediums, including ours that work with us, and they have that same feeling that it's for them. Spirit is totally different. It's a different time. It's the whole experience is a little bit different than it is for us. And again, that would make sense because we're on this plane and they're on a different frequency and operating on higher frequencies. Or if they're negative entities, obviously they're operating on lower frequencies. Right.
True.
So those are all all that's relevant as well.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating stuff. Michelle, Al, you guys got some other questions or about the spirit release?
Well, not about that, but do you believe in like reincarnation and like past lives? And
I do. I've had those types of visions, I guess you'd say, and mediums I've worked with have also have those kind of connections. So yeah, I think it's very possible that we come here and this is kind of a learning, kind of a classroom for us. It's a place to learn lessons. And if you don't get the lesson, you get an opportunity to come back and try again if you want to, maybe in a different gender, in a different race, a different part of the world or whatever, to help you get that experience that you need for your spiritual growth. So I think it's a very possible thing. Yeah.
Constantly evolving and trying to reach our true higher self and reach that plane.
It really is. So,
I think we share a lot of similar thoughts. Just a lot of things you're talking about, our team resonates with very, very well because it's a lot of the same belief systems. And like I said, our team's it's a little different than some of the more conventional teams, which like yourself, you guys do something totally unique. So I got to ask, out of all these cases that you've worked and all the ones that you've done, what was probably for you the most memorable, the one that you really either got the most satisfaction out of, or the one that you just maybe it just sticks with you the most for whatever reason?
Well, there's been a lot. My first, probably the most profound experience I ever had was when my guests kind of opened up just immediately. And I was down in St. Augustine, Florida with my daughter on a family vacation. We were going on ghost tours down there. I was interested at that point. I was investigating here in Memphis and heard some, read some things about different spirits that were seen in different areas in St. Augustine down there. And we were at a pretty famous cemetery called Tolomato Cemetery, which is up behind the old part of the town. And it was our last night there. We were riding some bicycles, and it was late at night. And earlier that afternoon, we had met this lady at the entrance to the cemetery named Debbie. And she was taking photos, and she's just a natural spirit photographer. I mean, just every single photo that she was taking had something in it.
Wow.
Apparently she goes there to the cemetery and talks to the spirits all the time, and they're familiar with her and comfortable with her, and they would show up in her photos. So we had met her earlier in the evening, and we were riding back to our hotel that night on our bicycles, and I saw her down at the entrance to the cemetery. And as we were riding past this little house that was to the right side of the cemetery, there's a little alley between the cemetery and this house. The house is called, it's being used for a shop. It's called at that time the Love Tree Cafe. And I just had a knowing that there was a little girl in that alley, you know. And so I knew Debbie was down there. So I told my daughter to go on down there to where she was and just stay with her, because I felt like this was an experience that I needed to have on my own.
Right.
And I had an EMF meter, had a ghost meter with me. And so I turned my bicycle in there and got off of it and walked up to this little tree there. And I said, you're a little girl, aren't you? And she would respond with my meter. She would make them light up and make noise. And I could see her in my mind's eye. I knew exactly what she looked like. So I would say, you're 6 years old. And she would respond. And she was 6 years old. She was wearing a blue dress. She had blonde hair. She was a little petite little girl. And I knew what her name was. Her name was Alice. I just knew it.
Wow.
Yep.
So that lasted for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then it stopped. And then she stopped. And it was really getting close to the time for us to go back to our hotel and get ready for our flight the next morning. So I went on down to the entrance to the cemetery, and my daughter was there with this lady named Debbie. And I said, well, I don't really know if I believe what just happened, but I'm going to share this with you, because my daughter is very skeptical too at that point. And I said, well, I think I had an experience with a child spirit down there in that little alley. And I described her and said her name, and the lady said, oh, Alice, people see her up on the porch of that house all the time.
And there was the validation. Yep.
Yeah. So there was the validation. And of course, my daughter's jaw just dropped. You know, we talked a lot about that on the way home on the flight. But so that was really probably my most profound experience. It wasn't an investigation. It was just an interaction that really sealed the deal for me. I mean,
and we found that some of the best experiences that you have are not while you're investigating at all.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, if you're open to this work, you're going to have spirits come to you no matter where you are. If you're one time, the Jennifer that was mentioned earlier that did a lot of remote work with us, Jennifer and Kayla and I were driving on the interstate towards you guys. We were crossing the Tennessee River, going up around Cookville.
Yep.
Yeah, the house over there. And as we crossed the Tennessee River, I could feel this masculine energy in the car with us. This male spirit had gotten in the car with us. And Kayla was in the back seat taking a nap, and Jennifer was just reading or something. And I said, hey, can y'all open up and tune in? I think we got somebody here with us. And to me, it seemed like he was like a young man, maybe in his 20s or late 20s, early 30s. I could see him like wearing a hunting coat in my mind's eye. And when they both opened up, they connected, and he was actually a guy from like World War II, and it was a paratrooper's jacket that he was wearing.
Wow.
They could see it more clearly than I could.
Right.
So we actually counseled him in the car, driving about 70 miles an hour on I-40, and spent about 10 or 15 minutes talking with him and finding out what he was needing. And he was looking for his mother. So we called on his mother. She came, and he released in transition.
That's fantastic.
In those hills for a long time, looking for his mother.
Yeah, and I think that for the people that have gifts and understand that, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying about feeling energy and seeing it in your mind's eye. And again, I'm kind of just getting into that side of my work, but I think the best way that I can describe it is you just feel it and you just know. So like your experience when you had that with Alice, when you say that, that really resonates with me. But how do you describe that to people who haven't experienced any of the energy feeling or any of that? How do you describe that when you're just talking to people and telling the story to people who maybe don't quite understand that? I'm just curious to see how you would describe or how you would explain that.
Well, earlier Al said that he was a big skeptic. Well, Al, I was a bigger skeptic in the beginning than you could have possibly imagined. So for the first full year that I was investigating with the two ladies, I had all kinds of things happen. I was always looking for some kind of rational explanation, you know, maybe it's a power surge that turned the stereo on and off. And, you know, that song that played had or meaning, maybe that was just on there or whatever. But eventually we went to a theater up in Covington, Tennessee, north of Memphis. And there's a little girl that we had recorded her voice during several investigations. We knew she was there. And I took some period music from her time period, turn of the century, and played that, and she spoke out loud. And after that was like, okay, you know, this is real, you know. And but that was about 2004, and then about 2005, I was in the slave quarters of that antebellum home over in Bolivar that was bed and breakfast. So we used to do workshops, and I just started feeling this tingling type sensation around my crown chakra.
Right.
I don't know what it was.
Absolutely.
It started there in a one part of that slave quarters where we knew there was 2 or 3 spirits in there because they had been seen by other people. And so I looked for a teacher, and I started taking some classes, and I met mediums. Just almost immediately I met a medium that I started working with. And what would happen was I would go into a place, and if I felt that tingling, I would say, do you see anybody? And she would say, yeah, there's a guy standing over there in the corner. So I learned if I feel on my right side over here, that's masculine. If I feel on the left side, it's feminine. And the lower I feel it is, that's where I feel the earthbound spirits. And if I feel it higher in my crown chakra, it's in my energy field. That's what it is.
Right. They're a higher vibration within your
yeah.
energy,
So it's, to me,
it's going to resonate with those higher chakras.
It's like my guides have kind of mapped out my crown chakra to where if I have these sensations, I can immediately distinguish, you know, the gender and the vibrational frequency of the spirit. So I'm kind of like a human K2 meter in a sense, but better because I can distinguish more.
Right.
Not just the presence of a spirit energy, but you know, gender and age. Sometimes I can even figure that out. So that's how it works for me.
Yeah.
Now the experience I had with Alice, that's called claircognizance. That's just when you have a knowing. And the way I also describe it to people that if they have not had an experience where they've seen a spirit in their mind's eye, I just say, well, think of your grandmother. Yeah. Can you picture your grandmother? Of course, everybody can, you know, so it's the same thing. It's just like an image of the person pops up into your mind's eye.
Like a memory or like a dream, like a dream. Yeah.
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 And the more you work with this and develop it, and there's books out there that'll help you develop these, because I believe everybody has these abilities. They're latent. Sometimes people have experiences when they're children that frighten them, and they kind of shut it off, and then it lays dormant for a long time, and then eventually they pick it back up when the time is right.
Yeah, we believe the same way, and our psychic mediums on our team feel the same way. And you know, a lot of us on the team have transitioned through different levels of different things that we recognize that exact thing that you're talking about. And I also think society kind of, especially, you know, our generation, society really wasn't as open as it is today because a lot of the shows didn't exist. These things didn't exist. It kind of brought good and bad to the thing. But you know, you're kind of taught, you know, don't know, you don't believe that. That's not, you know, you're not seeing that, you're not experiencing that when you're little. You know, society kind of wants to shut you down and dismiss everything as, you know, your childhood imaginary friend. And it might not have been an imaginary friend. It may have been a spirit guide. It may have been a loved one. It may have just been a spirit trying to talk to you. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it's kind of something that, you know, I've always felt that you know, that gets shut down very early on a lot of kids that maybe could have transitioned into those gifts quicker.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot more acceptable now. You know, there's shows on lot of the networks with mediums and so forth. So it's not such a taboo subject anymore. It's become more commonplace. And the TV shows, I just tuned into one the other day after not watching them for years and years, and I was kind of disappointed that they're basically doing the same thing. They're referring to spirits as it did this, it did that, not he or she did this, or not. They still seem to think of the spirits as phenomena rather than, they lost the humanity, the side of the humanity of all this. So that was disappointing to me to see that. But the good thing that the shows have done is brought it out more into the mainstream, and there's a lot of interest in the subject.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's another very valid point that you're mentioning there about, what we see in this community. And that's what the big transition happened for our team. We had been working with our psychic medium for a couple of years before she officially joined our team up at the Nickerson Sneed, doing different experiments. Because we start out, pretty much doing like your traditional ghost hunters, your meters and your stuff. We still use all our gadgets because it's fun, but that's what our focus was. We didn't do, and then all of a sudden, as we started doing this work with her, we started learning a whole different world, a whole different way to look at spirit, a whole different way to look at hauntings, a whole different way to even look at the Victorian era methods where you use your energies, the dowsing rods and the Ouija boards and the different tools that you can use that are energy driven and not technology driven. And we quickly saw, we went from going and getting a few EVPs and having an experience to actually getting legitimate answers, finding the truth about what was happening at locations. So I think what I would love to see happen for our community, and I think it kind of is, because when you start seeing it on TV, it means that the mainstream is starting to kind of move that way, but blending more of what the traditional ghost hunters do and what you do and what, we all do, and kind of blending those two things. That's the only way we're ever going to move the needle forward. We're going to be stuck in the same cycle if we don't move that needle forward. So that's why we love talking to people like you, because it gets that message out of where we really think this community hopefully will head in the coming years.
Yeah. Well, I've come from both camps, from the equipment camp and from the mediumship type camp. And I think there can be a good balance between the two. I mean, I do carry an EMF meter with me, mostly carry it just to check on wiring and to make sure there's no excessive EMF in there that could be causing psychological issues with the client. But, sometimes spirits will interact with that, and I always give it to the client anyway and let them carry it around so it makes them feel like they're involved in the investigation. And sometimes they will they will go to the client rather than to the investigator, because they're more familiar with the client. So that also is another aspect of that. But yeah, I mean, I've used equipment in the past. I see nothing wrong with that. To me, doing it the way we're doing it is more streamlined, it's more efficient, it's faster. We can still get the same answers. You touched on that a few minutes ago. We get the same answers, just we use a different method. And the other thing is, like, we do our investigations from 7 to 9 p.m., usually on Friday night or Sunday night. And, a lot of times people have children in their homes, and we always require that the children be cared for away from the home while we're there. So we try to get out of there so they can get their kids back in and get them into bed at a decent hour rather than staying there until 11, 12, or 1 o'clock. And maybe the kids have to be at somebody else's house overnight. So it's just a different way of doing it. It just works for us. So.
Absolutely. And that's what, I think is really, really cool is, when you find what works for you or works for your team, works for your group, it doesn't really matter what other groups do or other teams does. You got to do what works for you, what gets you the results, what your truth is, work your path and work your truth. And one of the things that, we found that was cool with our psychics was they kind of like it when we bring out like the EDI or things, because it helps validate what they're getting. Not that they need that validation, but sometimes the client does. Sometimes, when we're doing residential work, they're still real skeptical of the psychic side of things. So when a psychic can say something and then we can show them a piece of evidence that 100% is backing up what we're getting intuitively, it's like a secondary or tertiary validation. So in depending on what kind of, we're doing, if we're doing something like with a public event or a residential case or a known haunt, it's a little different than what you're doing. You're doing specific helping people with spirit releasement. But you get what I'm saying. It's just kind of a way to blend. And I think that's what I hope this community works more towards, to get the truth at locations.
Well, the main thing in my view is to help the client, number one, because they're the one that contacted you, and they're the ones that are going through these disturbing experiences, and their life is upside down and their kids are frightened. You know, they're number one. Then you've got to also consider the spirits who are there, because that's somebody's, again, many people will view it as a phenomenon. You know, there's a spirit that moved this or did that or heard a voice. It was sound like a child's voice. It's somebody's kid. You know,
right.
There's somebody on the other side that's waiting on that person, you know, who's stuck there. The girl in the closet who thought the house was still on fire. Her mother and other siblings and grandparents are waiting on that girl.
That's right.
So if you can help that situation to where you move those people on, it'll have a positive effect really in the environment of that area. And actually, one time we were in a house in an area north of Memphis. I was working with a different medium at the time, and there was a conflict between settlers who had come into the area and the Native Americans, and there was some Native settlers there who had not transitioned. Now, I've never come across a Native American that's earthbound, because I think they were at a spiritual level that when it was,
they understood that a lot differently.
The idea of the afterlife. So when it was their time, they were very comfortable in releasing. But anyway, we were at this site, and we had this Native American. They had put sentinels around this property. There was like 4 real dark, tall energies that the Native Americans had put around this, because I guess to them it was like a sacred site because of the events that had taken place there. Maybe the land was sacred in the beginning. But we had this Native American medicine woman come to us, and she told us that every time that an earthbound spirit is helped to cross, it has a positive effect in the entire universe. That was kind of mind blowing to me. But you know, if there's balance and everything, and if there's positive and negative and light and dark, I guess if you look at it that way, you know, if there's someone here that's stuck in this plane that's not supposed to be here, and you help them to get to the next plane higher or whatever,
absolutely,
then it does have a ripple effect, I guess, somewhere in the scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about every culture, and if most of us that really get deep into the research side, we start studying other cultures. We start looking at what the Mesopotamians did. We look at what the Native American did, because we're trying to understand what we're dealing with. And when we go to these different cases, we encounter different things. So the more knowledge you have, obviously, the more you can try to wrap your head around what's happening. But what you said is so true. If you look at almost every culture, you look at, you know, the Eastern philosophies, you look at yin and yang, you look at all these different things. We got a question that just popped up, but I'll finish my thought while you read that question. But, you know, you look at yin and yang, right? It's a balance. It's a balance of positive and negative. It's karma exchange. Even when we talk about just daily interactions of energy, that karma exchange, that balance is so important. So it would make a lot of sense that when we do good work, and you do good work with what you're doing, and we cross a spirit or we release that energy, it's got to have a profoundly positive impact outside of just the environment. So anyways, take the question there out.
That's what she told us. Yeah, suicides are difficult because there's always, when you connect with someone who's committed suicide, they're always remorseful, regretful. They realize it didn't help the situation. It caused more problems for their family and loved ones. So there's a lot of guilt. But if you can explain to them that they can actually help their family members as they move on, they can actually come back and serve as like a spirit guide or a guardian angel type energy for that person. They're able to let all that go. And so her question is, you feel like she is gone, but many say you cannot move them on. Yes, you can move them on, in my experience, very easily if you just do some really good counseling with them. And call on those people that they are wanting to connect with, they almost always will go.
Yeah,
but I think go ahead, Al. I'm sorry.
Say that Jennifer is with the Ghost Sisters out of Ohio, and we got to do an investigation, like actually a couple with them, about a month ago. So
yeah, she's a medium herself. She has those abilities.
Thank you for your question.
But something you said, I think people get confused on. I think people confuse when they hear people talking about crossing spirits over. And like I said, it's not my area of work, but I have worked with mediums that do that. I think people confuse that. I think people think like, well, I'm physically moving them out. You're giving them the path, right? You're showing them how to move on, and you're counseling them to do that. That's not you physically moving them. And I think people confuse that. Do you want to kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's
maybe?
a process. We actually ask for assistance from higher vibrational energies that we work with on the other side. They facilitate that transitioning for us. So it's a matter of, again, counseling and trying to find as much information as you can about the spirit you're working with. I met an English medium named Audrey Abernathy many years ago, and she was involved in what she calls sending circles after World War II. And what they would do is they'd get together in their homes and on a weekly basis, and then ask their guides to bring in any spirits of soldiers and people that were, killed during the war to them. And they would sing, and they would do all these techniques to raise the vibration, and then would help these spirits to release. And what she told me that I thought was really important, I've never forgotten, is when you do connect with a spirit, ask as many questions as you can, because the more you know about what's holding them here, in fact, as they talk about it, they release it in a sense. It's something they've been holding on to for such a long time that's kept them here. And then you can, once you call in those loved ones on the other side, and again, we're not doing the work. What we're doing is directing their attention and their awareness to those people. And our allies on the other side bring the perfect people to them. So, we don't know if someone has a good relationship with their father. Maybe they didn't, maybe he was a cruel man or whatever. Sometimes they'll bring, one guy, they brought a horse because he was like a cowboy kind of guy. And I guess his horse was his favorite companion or his trusted companion. So sometimes they bring pets, and they'll bring, you just don't know who the perfect person is, but they do on the other side.
Right. Spirit's always right. Sometimes the interpretation's wrong. Yeah,
we used to have to ask for that. Now it just kind of happens automatically, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I think that also brings up another point. One of our thoughts and one of the theories we've always had is, and I'm not going to get lost in the weeds on this because we easily could, but it's kind of like you constantly hear there's a demon in every house, or I think people confuse negative energy a lot of times with or bad people. And where I'm going with this is simply this. Our thought has always been people are in life as they are in death. So if for lack of better words, if you're an ass in life, should we be shocked that you're an ass in death? Not really. I mean, it's what has that been your experience as well? That
Absolutely.
People, they're just people. I mean, they're still people. They're just no longer in physical form.
Yeah, when you pass and when you become earthbound, for some reason, when you miss the bus and you decide to hang around for whatever reason, fear of punishment because of your religious upbringing or unfinished business, or many times people grieve their loved ones when they pass so heavily that the loved one feels an obligation to stay close. It's not good for the person who's passed, and it's not really good for the person here still on the earth plane. But I agree with everything you said on that. Totally. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. This has been a great conversation so far. I mean, I know I've enjoyed it. I hope everybody else has. It's been really fascinating. Some of the regular questions we ask, Al, why don't we jump into a couple other quick topics? We'll switch gears for a few minutes.
Well, actually, I had something I wanted to ask him about. I did watch your interview with Josh. I was watching it the night you did it with Josh, but I went back and watched it again. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Myrtles plantation, because that is on mine and Matt's bucket list for sure.
Yeah.
And just real quick, he's referring to Josh Morris of the Everything Paranormal Show.
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and give him a quick plug.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to hear about the Myrtles, Mike?
Oh, yeah. I want to hear about the Myrtles.
Yeah. Well, I've been in a lot of the places that you've seen on TV shows. I've been in the Thomas House, St. Augustine Lighthouse, of course, the Myrtles. I was going to New Orleans on a trip one time. I said, let's swing by and go spend the night at the Myrtles. So we got always look for the most haunted room.
Yeah.
So we stayed in this room, and I was with a medium. And during the night, we were awakened, and there was a man standing there, a spirit man, in a tall. This is probably one of the oldest time period guys I've seen. He had to be from like the 1700s rather than the 1800s, because he had a real tall top hat and he was wearing unusual clothing the way she described it. So he came and he had his, I guess, mistress with him. This lady was with him, and he was actually wanting our help. So we did some counseling with him and helped him to cross over. And they both did the transition. And then this was one of the first times I've ever seen a mass crossing. It was almost like we had opened up a light portal that spirits from all around, all these plantations were right around us there, and they started just streaming in. It was just like amazing. And I could feel the energy, and my medium friend could see it because she's clairvoyant.
Right.
And that lasted quite a long time. So there were several other spirits that I had read about there that we did not interact with. I don't know if someone else had already helped them to release and transition. It's like a child spirit. I'm always trying to help, if there's a child that I've read about, I'm always going to try to help them make that transition. But we didn't come across that particular spirit. But yeah, it's very different than what you would think a plantation house would be like, but it's definitely worth the visit.
Yeah. I'm actually reading Francis Carmine's book on the Myrtles plantation. I've not got it finished yet, but it's very interesting. I think she owned it for about 15 or 20 years back in like maybe early 80s to the 90s.
I know there's supposed to be a famous spirit that a lot of people see, but we didn't come across that young lady. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that's the one that's in the famous photo, right? I think of the Myrtles. Yeah, that you're referring to.
Yeah.
And that's another great point too that you kind of mentioned there. I kind of want to touch and get your thought on. I know in our experience, there are a lot of times that we will have when we're working with different things, if it's dowsing rods or if we're doing something with a seance or something like that, we will get spirits that are not at all related to the property. We get that quite frequently. We get what we sometimes refer to kind of as, attachments, but not in a bad attachment sense, but that are with, guests that maybe are visiting on the investigation or from the public that are visiting. Right. So what you talk about at the Myrtles, that just kind of triggered that in my mind. Has it been your experience that, it's kind of like the moth to the flame when they realize that, we have people or that are sensitive or can connect or full blown, they will come regardless if they're with the place or not. Right.
Yeah, they're able to sense that somehow. The guy on the interstate's a good example of that. I mean, we were just driving by. We weren't really working in that sense. We were talking, and I think just doing regular stuff. And all of a sudden, this guy gets in the car with us, and that happens quite often. And many times, I will go places. One time, we took a trip down to what's called Fort Sumter in Andersonville, Georgia. It was a notorious Confederate POW camp. That was another place where I experienced a mass crossing. We had this young soldier come to us, and he was, he was drawn through, I guess, our light, I guess you'd say, our vibration. And so he knew that Rebecca, the girl I was with at the time, the medium, she could see him, and I could feel his energy, of course. And so we had a conversation with him, and he would not, at first he didn't believe us that the war was over, because he felt like, and I've come across this many times with soldiers, they feel like they're still on duty. And so we had to explain to him about that. And then the only way that we were able to convince him or to help him to release was I got the idea to call on his commanding officer, because he was still in his mind. So this guy came, and he said, yeah, you can go home. This is over. And then he left, and then behind him, a bunch lined up behind him, a bunch of soldiers lined up behind him. We had to leave, but as we turned back, she said, I can still see them. And then we went into the little town, which is kind of a preserved restoration of the old town there. and I was walking along, and it felt like my right arm was electrified, and I knew there was a child there, a female little girl, and so my friend could see her, and that little girl walked with me through the whole town for about 15 or 20 minutes, and we talked to her, and I tried to explain to her she didn't have to be there, but at the end she just decided she wanted to stay. So it's all free will. You can counsel and counsel. But the main thing is, if you go into a place and you have these abilities, and that's why I think any team that's out there that's doing this kind of work, they might want to explore this idea. If you can go into these places and be able to sense this and get a connection going on, you can actually help these spirits. You really can.
Fantastic. It's great information too. And I really like the way that you describe things, because I think for people that don't understand this work, they can really relate to what you're saying and the way that you're explaining it. So thank you for explaining it in a way that I think is really easy, because sometimes we get caught up in the technical jargon of things, or mediums will get talking about things that are so common to them that people that haven't experienced that don't always understand it. So I think that's really great information. And I want to add, this is something I talk about a lot, but I want to add this to it. When we talk about doing the type of work that you do, doing residential work, we always say this, and we believe this wholeheartedly. If you're in this for thrill seeking, that's not appropriate to go into people's homes and do this kind of work, because you can do a lot more damage than good. And I think people don't realize that. It's also the same reason why we don't believe in provocation, because, would you walk into Walmart and start talking to people that way? You probably shouldn't, or you wouldn't, or you shouldn't. So why would you treat spirits in the same manner? So, so fantastic. So I got to ask you another quick question. If you could go anywhere on the globe, this is one I want to see what your answer is. Because I'm curious, because I think I know where you're going to probably go. I don't know why, I just got this gut feeling. But if you could pick any location in the world and you could go there and do the work that you do, what location would that be, and why would you choose that spot?
Well, before I became aware that I had these gifts and was able to sense this energy, I did some traveling in Europe, and England and Scotland always kind of are near and dear to my heart. That's where my ancestors come from. And I've been in a lot of castles over there. At the time, I was just admiring the architecture or whatever.
Right.
But I'd love to go back into some of those castles. I can't think of anyone in particular right now. I went in so many of them over there, but I would just like to go back into those castles and see if I could connect with anybody there that needs help, and help them find their way back into the light, rather than be walking around those old dark and damp castles for who knows how long.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was going to say Ireland. For some reason, I was getting Ireland.
Yeah, I've never been to Ireland. That's on my bucket list. So the old castles have a fascination for me now, and I've not been able to get back over there.
And I get that, because I was thinking, you was talking about the oldest spirit that you've physically seen was in the 1700s, and I think, as far as our team goes, experience-wise, is obviously we've only traveled the continental U.S. and done this, so we've not been to places that have. There's history. There's always old Earth energies and non-human energy. There's all kinds of different things, but I'm talking about human energies. Beyond the early settlers, Native Americans, and maybe even the ancients, but the very early paleos or whatever, which we don't encounter a lot of. But my point being, Ireland, me too. But the point being is that when you think of a place like Europe, or a place like Ireland, Scotland, Italy, a place that have thousands, 2,000 years of history, that's a lot of human energy that has been there. That's a lot. That's a lot to go through the process. So I can imagine that there's a totally different vibe with that much history. I totally blew what I was trying to say, but I think it made sense.
Now, in our continent, I've interacted with a lot of Native American energies. Of course, they go way, way, way back, but they're usually the ones that I've interacted with are usually guides or protectors, that type of thing. So we actually have Kayla has a guide that if she's not able to come with me and with Stevie, the other guy I'm working with, her guide comes.
That's cool.
He helps us out. And then I've got a couple of Native American guides that I've been working with for a long time. So I don't know. They just seem to, I guess because of their level of spirituality and their connection with the other higher dimensions, they just seem to come back and serve in those capacities more so than others that I've, come across. So.
And that goes back to that greater good thing, I would think. I think that goes back to that energy balance, kind of thing.
Right.
So super cool, man. So Al, Michelle, other questions?
Do you have any questions?
I'm just listening. It's fascinating to me because I haven't been doing this that long. So I'm still learning all this.
We give Michelle a hard time. She was like our first groupie. So she kept hanging around and watching.
They took me in.
So we just took her in.
So what are you looking for, Michelle? Because when I started this, I was looking for proof that there's an afterlife, and I got that pretty quick.
Yeah.
That's what my first thing was, but I'm learning so much, just like you said about energy and I'm I haven't even started opening up that much, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
There's some really
she'll feel things. You watch her in the field and I'm feeling stuff. Our people, I'm looking at her and she's feeling it. She's just not saying it. She's not saying that she's got that, but she's feeling it already.
And
I'm giving her a hard time because I can't.
That's one thing I was going to say. About myself. I don't feel like I'm empathic. I don't feel like I'm intuitive. I subscribe more to the technology things, the tools, equipment. About everybody on our team has some of those abilities, or they had experiences, before they joined the team, which I never had an experience until I actually joined the team.
Yeah.
But growing up, I was always fascinated with ghost stories and books, and I'd get my hands on every Hans Hosler book I could find and read it.
Yeah.
But I really, until, me and Matt's known each other for about 25 years. And I didn't even know, he had a team. And then I just, kind of asked to go out with him one night. And, the first couple of places we went weren't really active. So, it took a few times for me to actually have an experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say I'm the skeptic on the team, but I'm not as skeptical as I used to be.
I was the skeptic too, and I used to describe myself as being as psychic as a fence post. And so that was 2000.
Look at you now, right?
I've been doing this for a little bit over 18 years. So in July of 2002 is when I went on my first investigation. And it wasn't until like 2005 when I was sitting in those slave quarters of that antebellum home that I started being able to feel the energy. So I think the more you're in the energy, spirit energy and around spirit energy, the more it opens you up to it. Yeah. So you're in the right place. Your guides have sent you to the right place to and become more aware of all this. But there's also some really good books out there. Sonia Choquette is a medium up in the Chicago, Illinois area that has written a lot of books. And many times the work that we do, I feel like, is multi-level, because not only are we helping the spirits there, but we're also helping the clients. And many times those clients have awakened to their gifts, and they're many times terrified or they're confused, and spirits are coming to them and they're attracting spirits and all this kind of stuff. So I always recommend a couple of books that Sonia Choquette has written. One's called Trust Your Vibes, and one's called Ask Your Guides. The first one talks about how to sense energy and work with energy, and the second one's more about your spiritual entourage that's around you. And then there's an English medium. Someone gave me his book last year. His name is Kyle Gray, Gray. And he's written a book called Raise Your Vibration, and he's broken it down into a daily practice, different things you can do daily over a year if you want to do it that way. That's a fantastic book.
Okay.
Increase your vibration and to get more connected with spirit.
What was the ones you mentioned before the Kyle Gray?
Sonia, Sonia Choquette is her name. And it's Trust Your Vibes, Vibes, and Ask Your Guides. I've been recommended those 2 books for probably 15 or 16 years. So she's probably become a millionaire from my referrals.
Let me make sure I got that right. CHOQUETTE.
That's it. Right.
Okay.
There's
I wrote that down.
books out there, but those are great starting points. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in case you forgot, Al, this is actually recorded, so you can.
Yeah, I know. I just happened to have a piece of paper and a pen in front of me, so I wanted
Al, it would not be a complete show if I didn't bust your chops. I just what I do. I've 25 years I've been doing that. So how can I change now? And actually, what we'll do is we'll go back and actually add those book recommendations since you recommended them. We'll actually go ahead and put those in the descriptions because I think that's fantastic. Because I'm living proof that anybody that wants to try and open up can. It's possible. And I think you're right. Everybody has the gifts. You're living proof. I'm living proof of that. So if you want it, you can make it. You can do it.
Right. And I think too, it takes, when I heard that little girl speak out loud, and I knew at that point that, this was a reality. And the more that you have these experiences, it seems like your guides will give you all these experiences and bring all these people into your life that just enhance that. And to me, it's just a way of life now. I mean, I'm a massage therapist. And so many times when I had a lady on my table last night, I was doing a session for her, and her mother came in.
Wow.
And I could feel her mother's presence. And I had never talked to this client at all about it because I don't usually bring those things up unless I know they're open to it. But the mother was adamant. And I could hear a name, and sometimes I get the name exactly, and sometimes I get close to it. Well, I got close to the name. And at the end, when we were finished and I was talking to her, I said, well, are you interested in metaphysical things? And have you ever studied anything like that? And she said, yeah, I'm interested. And I said, I explained to her, kind of what had happened. And I had a message from her today. She said, I'm still contemplating that. But the thing that was really incredible was her mother passed around this time of year. And it was kind of like an anniversary thing. So that's, I think, why she showed up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's like you said earlier,
I would not have been able to have felt that energy, and I would not have been able to get a name. But over time, those things developed where it just happens.
Yeah, that's something I was going to ask you about. I mean, obviously you can pick up on people's energy when you're physically, touching them, giving them a massage. And you said you sometimes you bring it up, sometimes you don't. But do you ever get people on your table and you're like, oh, this person's got really bad energy? Or
no, I'm not reading their energy. It's usually their loved ones that come in that I feel that come in like a mother or a father or someone like that, or a friend. So usually they're I guess they're with that person, around that person a lot, and to me. The person comes to me and they think, okay, well, here's somebody that might be able to get a message across to a loved one here. And we have a fantastic medium here in the Memphis area that used to work with my little group here in the beginning. She got too busy with her readings and stuff. And if the person's open to that, I mean, she's like the bomb. So if they really want to have, get a dialogue going with their loved one or get messages from the loved one, I always send them to that person because she can really deliver the information.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And I think you said something too that earlier is, like in your work is doing the massage therapy. And I know Al's question, but on another note, those spirits are going to seek you out because they know you're open. So I think that must be a challenge sometimes. So what do you do when spirit is not letting go? You've got that message. What do you do when the person isn't open? Do you how do you handle it? I know it's different from
don't deliver it.
Medium. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, that's kind of like universal law. I mean, you can't. I think there's a TV show, they call her the Long Island Medium or something.
Yeah.
She walks up to people in the supermarket and delivers messages. That's bad karma, in my opinion. But no, you can't. I mean, I have to wait for an opening to be sure that the person's open to receive that type of information because, hey, we're in the Bible Belt over here in Memphis. I guess you guys are over there.
Yeah.
Their area too. So you got to be, you got to be respectful of people's beliefs. And unless that lady had been so adamant last night, the spirit lady, the mother, I would not have delivered that message. But my client had actually brought me a magazine the title of the magazine is Spirituality and Health. So I felt like I had an opening there. She was very grateful to hear that. And again, the name was really, really close. I didn't get the name exact, but it was so close, it was undeniable as to who it was. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
And that's the frame of reference thing too. Sometimes the frame of reference isn't always how our spirit's right. Our interpretation sometimes isn't. But
right.
In
it's just the way I was taught. I was taught by when I started feeling that tingling. I looked for a teacher here in the Memphis area, and I was blessed that there was a lady here that had been teaching metaphysical arts and psychic development type exercises and those types of things for like 40 years. So. I got a great training in that. Yeah. So
fantastic. Well, do you have anything coming up that you want to promote? We're getting towards the end of the hour. We'll ask you once we sign off. We'll ask you to stick around for a few minutes. We'll say our goodbyes off the air. But anything you want to promote? Anything you got coming up?
I'm working. People have told me for years and years I should write a book about my experiences and about spirit rescue. There's a few books out there. A couple of them are kind of complicated. I think too complicated for. I'm a KISS kind of guy. It's got to be simple. So I'm writing a book, a guidebook specifically for paranormal investigators and people who track spirits to them. So it'll explain the methods that we use, and they're very simple. Like I said, we can usually go into a location and be out of there within an hour or two at the most, depending on the size of the location. So it's kind of a streamlined, simplified process. It's not complicated. So I'm going to try to publish this book in the spring.
Fantastic. When you get it published, let us know for sure. Because number one, I want to read it. And number two, we'd love to have you back on to talk about the book and talk more about your experiences. With 18 years of experiences, I know we could fill a whole nother hour discussing these topics. We could get a little deeper on some of the topics, because I think we've got a lot of like mindset on a lot of these things. So also for anybody out there that is interested in getting in touch with Stephen and his work, the Memphis Ghost Investigations.com has been scrolling along the bottom. The links to their Facebook and their website are also in the notes of the show on both YouTube and on the Facebook side. So make sure if you are anywhere in their area or have any further questions, or is there anything that Stephen can help you with, I'm sure if you send him a message, he'd be happy to point you in the right direction, or at least discuss it with you for sure. So anything else you guys want to ask before we get ready to wrap the show?
Well, Josh stole our fun question. So,
you want to ask it anyway? I forgot. I got so excited about talking about this stuff.
It could have changed. Your answer could have changed. So, say you were to unfortunately pass away and you come back as a spirit. What would you wear? That was our question, and Josh stole it. So
white, of course.
White.
I've always kind of favored white. I don't know. It seems like once I opened up to my gifts and was able to sense energy, a lot of the things that I used to like, colors I used to like, music I used to like, is too harsh for me these days. So I just tend to go with like white or light type things. So I'll probably wear a white robe. Be traditional.
Man, tell him your answer.
I'm kind of a darker kind of guy, I guess. I was coming back like in the Grim Reaper costume, just because it's so overdone, and everybody would think it was a prank, and then I would just torment people, which is terrible. I know that's terrible karma, and that would be bad karma exchange. But that, I think I'm a prankster, so I can't help it. I like to joke with people and have fun. So I think I would definitely choose something that would be funny. I used to say the Grim Reaper, but that's probably a little too far in hindsight. But anyhow, that's kind of my thing. You guys, Michelle, Al?
Oh, I said I would be like the woman in white.
Her answers changed. It used to be yoga pants, and then
comfort, first. But then I was like, well, let me be a little creepy.
No, creepy is Al's.
Yeah. I guess I said if I was going to come back to scare people, which is what my picture of ghosts are, growing up is supposed to be like, I'm just going to come back naked and scare everybody. So
that's creepy and frightening at the same time.
I've never seen a naked spirit, so that would be
the first. I might be the first.
And see, that's why I think it's a relevant question. We should be able to choose our ghost outfit.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you just proved it. No, you're not seeing a naked spirit.
I think most of them identify with, their same personalities and same likes and dislikes. So if they like wearing certain color, they're gonna come back in that color or show up in that color.
Yeah, and that makes it true. How they were in life is obviously in death how they're going to be.
And we know how you're going to be in death, Matt. So
yes, and I am an ass all the time. That is true. But seriously, I think that that's another great point too. Again, because I think it's also that frame of reference too for what they think people would recognize them as. So. Right. In reality, Michelle, you probably will wear yoga pants because that's what you wear. That's who you are, right? Even when we investigate, she wears a lot of yoga pants, don't you, Michelle?
Yeah. I mean, you're comfortable for like 8 hours.
Dress for comfort, not for style, right?
Right, correct.
Now, we always just like to kind of end the show on a funny note. But no, in all kidding aside, the work that you do, Stephen, is fantastic. I think people need to take it very serious. The paranormal investigating, the mediumship work, all of these things, we were dealing with they're still humans. They're just not in their physical form. So it's very important to respect these people who have passed. Treat them with the same respect you would treat the living, because they're just not in their physical form anymore. So again, man, fantastic work that you do. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I definitely hope you'll stay in touch. We don't believe in coincidences. We believe we meet people because we're destined to, and Spirit puts everybody in a path for a reason. So I hope that we get the opportunity to work with you sometime, Stephen. Definitely keep in touch, my friend, and we'd love to have you on again sometime.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Well, stick around. We'll say goodbye to you off the air. I'm going to shoot the outro. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Gathering. We will not be on next week. We will be back probably the following week, if not definitely through January and February. With the holidays, we've kind of taken a little bit of a lighter schedule to spend some time with family and do some of those things. But we got some great stuff coming up. We got some great shows coming up. The 22nd, which is Tuesday, I'm going to shamelessly plug myself here for a minute and the team. I'm going to be doing Ghost Talk. I'm going to be on there discussing the IDC device with that J.W. Prather builds. This is a spirit box, but it's a little different. Stephen, you'll appreciate this. It uses your energy. So the more open you are, it's like a digital Ouija board. The more open you are, the more information that comes through the box. It scans 3,560 frequencies. So, and it's completely random. So it's not like a regular shack hack that's just narrow 200 frequencies or 320 frequencies. 3,560 completely random. We get very little radio bleed over, and it's very much based on your energy. So I will be discussing that on Ghost Talk on the 22nd. You can check that out. That is Angie Mitchell's group over there. It's Ghost Talk on Facebook. It's on our Facebook. So that is the 22nd at 7 p.m. And then The Gathering will be back in a more regular schedule in January and February. Again, guys, please go show Stephen some love on his Facebook and check out their website. Keep up with the fascinating work that they do. Look very much forward to your book coming out. We'll definitely have you back on to discuss that. But as always, everybody, make sure you're respectful and seek the truth.